I've had to go from a minimum wage, $35K a year job, trying to support, my then girlfriend and 2 kids,
Right.
to like, 65K-ish, like managing to actually, support a little bit, to like now a decent wage. And so I guess that's kind of where I got to. And during that time, of course, I was still trying to write. I was still trying to do things. And I forced myself to write my one book, which I've not published, which I want to burn because it was a piece of crap. Because I told myself, no, I'm going to force myself to write a book, because if you don't force yourself, you're not going to get the skills you need to actually do it properly, right? So I forced myself to write one. It was absolutely atrocious. When I read it, I'm like, there's some good ideas, but most of it's crap.
What's it about?
It is about a different world to here. It's a world where the sun is very dim, doesn't shine very well. And the people there are not humans, they're humanoid. I think I said they're like blue-skinned people. Nowadays, that idea's already taken. Duh. But back then, there was, nothing like that back then. So I thought it was such a good idea, amazing idea, And this race is right now fighting a kind of demonic invasion. And they have a prophecy of how they're gonna, prevail, the hero that goes out and saves the world and all that. And he's got his companions that come with him.
The 12 disciples.
No, three companions. But like, it all kind of goes to crap by the end of the book, because they assumed that he was the hero. And later on, it turns out that he's not actually the hero. It's one of his companions that's actually meant to be the hero, that's meant to save their race. And because of that, the prophecy doesn't get fulfilled. It kind of just all falls apart. His entire race gets enslaved or killed, and he's left alone because all of his companions made sure he escaped, because he's meant to be the hero. And now he's like, oh, this is great. And that's basically how that book goes. It's not, of course, the end. Of course, there's many, many more books that are meant to come after that. And the demons don't just stay at this world. They open a portal to the next one that they're going to invade. And that world manages to fight them back, and so on and so forth. It's meant to be a huge series of books, which I will eventually write. But that was my first book that I wrote. And I'll have to rewrite it when I do want to release it. But for now, it'll just stay in the cobwebs of my mind.
That could work as a good comic book.
Potentially, yes. Most of my books could work okay as comic books or visual representations, because a lot of the time my imagination is visual in nature. So it could work. But yeah, I plan to just mainly stick to books. Just because I just like the idea. Not for any good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do an autobiography if you want.
Yeah, my great and amazing life.
It doesn't have to be like, some like show-off ego thing. It can just be like, just a picture into someone's life. Kind of like what a podcast can be at times.
Yeah.
Some window into your life, and just,
yeah,
and people might relate to it more.
Yeah, it could be, but like, that's not the value that I want to leave the world. And I can go into the values that I want to leave the world later if you like, but there's a lot of things that I want to do, and most of them I'm probably going to fail at, but that's, you don't succeed without trying. So
that's life.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was my first book, but I never published it. And I eventually published my book I currently have while I was with my wife. And so, yeah, as you can see, I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, okay, my kids are doing reasonably well. One of them's pursuing his dream. I have managed to fulfill both my dreams. So now I'm like, what is the next thing I'm going to try and achieve and build on and things like that. So I think I'm in a good place in my life currently.
Yeah. And with that book you mentioned that you currently have made, what is the book? What's the name of it? what was the inspiration behind making it and the storyline?
So the book is Murdoch, Embers in the Dark. Murdoch is going to be the world it's set in, and I'll have 2 other books that I'll eventually write. But time is always scarce, so and my writing is not financed by anything because, I'm a first-time writer, so book sales are non-existent, so, that's just the way it goes. But, so the inspiration for it, dream, I think, for this one. Most of my inspirations come from dreams or philosophical ideas that I want to write about. But very rarely is it from other people's work. It might filter in from other people's work, like the stuff that I watch or the games that I play, because I play computer games a lot. That's one of my hobbies. So it might filter it in. Music is also a good source of inspiration for things. But yeah, I have a rule that I don't read when I write a book so that I don't copy by accident direct, like line by line, word by word descriptions and things, because I think that can happen. Your brain's very happy to commandeer, things that it found kind of fun and useful. So yeah, so this one, I think it was a dream, but I think the first passage of the book where the character has a dream was the dream that I had, or something very similar, and then that grew into the book.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you like go to sleep and stuff, do you ever have like a notepad near your bed and you write down ideas that you randomly get?
No, but I do sometimes go, is this a book or not? I do ask myself that when I wake up from a dream. And if it is, then I will whip out my laptop and type up just a small paragraph description of what it is, so that at least I have something solid that when I read it could trigger it again. Yeah, but I have a lot to write, so I don't really need to write down any more ideas for now. I have a lot of books to write.
Definitely, yeah. And personally, I find it way easier to write kind of non-fiction like events and stuff rather than creating a whole fictional world, which is why I gave you the idea of an autobiography, because I find when you're just remembering things and then you're writing down exactly what happened is a lot easier than having the creativity to create a whole world and then build on it every step of the way.
Yes and no. I think creativity is a skill set of its own. And some people are born more with that spark and that love of creating to the point where they train it more, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So I like to separate the things you're born with, your innate, people call them talents, but I don't call them talents. I call them interests. Your innate interests that you're born with, there's a bunch of those. And you do have a bunch of physical attributes. Some people have a high IQ. IQ can't be changed, unfortunately. So some people have a high IQ. Some people have, stronger muscles. Some people are taller. There are certain things like that you're born with. But then all the skills that utilize your basic attributes, those you train. And that's why you can sometimes get extraordinary things where you have someone who doesn't possess the attributes you normally think of, oh, this guy is going to be a great such and such. But he ends up doing it because of the sheer amount of practice he's had at the skills that are involved. So I think it's not as cut and dry. So when it comes to creativity, definitely a skill, definitely can be built up, but you really have to like ideas and like to think. I think those are the big things, because when you're writing an autobiography, the story is already written. It's more the craftsmanship of the writing. While when you're a creative sort who wants to, create something from a bunch of scraps, that's essentially what creativity is. For those sorts of people, they tend to enjoy the creating process probably a little bit more than the actual building, if that kind of makes sense. I mean, I might be wrong. Everyone's different, but for me at least, the idea, creating the ideas, the feelings that go into the scenes, the interplay between characters, the characters feeling alive, stories that should be told sometimes. It's rare, but sometimes you have a story like, this story should be told. This is a really good story about, a good person or a bad person turning good or whatever, like
Or
some
like
kind of
trafficking and
inspirational.
stuff, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things. I kind of lost my train of thought. What was the question?
The original question was about, I believe, autobiographies were easier to write than like fictional stories.
Yeah, for me, the writing process itself is a pain. I had to edit my book myself because, as I said before, my books are not financed by anything at the moment because until you make it in one way or another, you need your day job. So, because of that, it basically meant that I had to edit that book like 11 times, I think, was
Did
the
you use
final count.
Grammarly to edit?
No. I mean, there's a spell checker on my word processing software, but no, it was manually reading through it, going, does this sound right? Does this read right? A lot of my conceptions of me being clever turned out to be something that just made it really difficult to read. So I had to restructure the sentences to be more simple because I'm just like, this is stupid. Like, I wouldn't read this if it was a book. That kind of thing. That's why I think you have to write a book. Like, you have to force yourself to write a book before you know how to write a book. At least how your brain is able to put things together in a way where it's understandable and enjoyable. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, long story short, it's easier to write an autobiography in terms of the creative part, but the writing part's still just as difficult, and making it entertaining is still just as difficult. But for someone who's writing a fantasy novel or something like that, the creating part tends to be the more enjoyable, fun part. And then the actual trying to get your ideas on paper, because they're not like physical things that have happened, becomes a lot harder, especially if it's high fantasy with dragons and magic and things like that. And understanding how that all works consistently in your own head, and then not proceeding to write an encyclopedia about how your world works, because people don't necessarily want to read that unless you write a separate book that's like the lore of the world. Then go ahead. But if you're wanting to write a fantasy story, then yeah, a lot of the time people like to experience the world, but not necessarily be told this is how it works. By the way.
Yeah. Kind of like Harry Potter, where the books kind of just kept getting into slightly deeper knowledge, but further on, rather than having it.
Yeah, exactly. Harry Potter is a very good example of a well done fantasy novel. It's a little bit too grounded in reality in terms of the fact that it's set in our current, well, not like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, current world. And yeah, that kind of puts me off when it comes to reading. But in Harry Potter, it's like very little parts of it are like that, so it's not too bad. But yeah, it's a very well written book. There's a lot of very well written books. Unfortunately, a lot of those authors that have written those wonderful, very well written books are getting older now, and they're either stopping writing or passing away. So, I mean, it's a negative and a positive. Positive is that there's more room to breathe. Negative is that in trying to fill those gaps, some authors that have connections would be pushed to the forefront, even if not necessarily is their work any good. And it will take probably 10 years, 15 years for, the actual good work to crop up and those positions to actually be filled by really good writers again. But I think that happens in all industries, though.
And then I guess with AI, that might also like rumble it a little bit.
Oh,
It's a lot of AI boosts.
that just increases the amount of junk there is.
Mm.
So the sea of, without sounding crass, the sea of refuse just gets bigger, right? There's just more crap out there. And that being said, my book might be also part of that crap. I don't know. I find it to be entertaining. A few people who've read it, very few people who've read it, also said it was really good, but that's just a couple of people, so it's not really tried and tested, right? And that requires people reading it and seeing whether they like it or not, and that's how the market works, really.
And talking about that book, I actually have a copy right here, which is called Murdoch Embers in the Dark.
Yep. And it's written by me, but it's underneath a pseudonym. So
Like a pen name.
yeah, exactly.
It's under Kelmiran.
Yeah, Kelmaran I Kelnor.
Yeah. And what was your idea with coming up with that name to represent you?
Kelmaran and Kelnor are both gaming names that I've used in the past when I was playing games online. The I is just so that I didn't end up with like a shortening of KK, which is a little bit too close to KKK, which I don't want any associations with. So Kick is a lot better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I does stand for Icarus. So there is something there, but it's just, it's just Kelnor essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the book.
It's available on Amazon.
That's right. It's available on Amazon. And both digital and physical copies.
Like ebook as well.
Yeah. And yeah, that's it.
And the process of...
Let's put it back there.
All right.
The process
of publishing a book on Amazon. That's why I dropped something.
I didn't see anything fall, but...
Maybe it got blown away by the wind, though. That's a little shame. Might keep it with the bag.
Yeah, the pages aren't going to fall out, so not to worry.
Yeah. Hopefully. Oh.
Amazon doesn't make books that are
right, I forgot to mention,
terrible.
Since you're the author, I would actually like you to sign the first page.
Good God. Will I even remember how to sign as KIK? We'll see. Yeah? You want a message or is that enough?
I mean, unless you have like a cheeky reference to some part of the story.
No cheeky references. But, yeah, I guess.
And then the blurb. What did you write in the blurb? Or like the part that's at the back of a book?
The blurb, I wrote essentially what the story is about, which is a witch who has nightmares. She's having nightmares regularly, and because she's having nightmares, she has to go on an adventure to try and find the source of those nightmares and to get rid of them in a world that doesn't particularly like witches.
Fair enough. Most worlds are like kind of like that.
Yeah. Most worlds are structured where witches get picked on a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, but she's like one of the good ones.
Sure. It's look, the perspective is from her, so yeah, she would call herself one of the good ones. But the thing is, witches in that world, they're just people who are just trying to survive, and they just happen to be born with magical, talents, and not be born into a family that is allowed to practice magic, essentially. So there is a leading body of mages that controls the use of magic, and unless you are part and parcel of that group and that society, you're counted as a witch and you must be hunted down. So that's basically how that particular kingdom operates. So it's not exactly a great place to be.
Yeah, so it's like run by the mages.
Yeah, essentially.
If you're found to be part of somewhat the magical lineage or...
Yeah, families, magical mage families that, are part of the leading body. They're counted as mages, and probably influential people and nobility probably also, go, well, it just happens to be a mage, So if you're part of the upper society, you would be counted as a mage. And if you're part of what, in these fantasy worlds you'd call the dregs, the lower down part of the society, or just a country person, then you would be like, oh, well, you're a witch.
Mm.
There's no real distinction
Yeah.
between mages and witches other than that.
Okay, yeah. But
Which
there's
is,
also like non-witches like in the world, or
oh, plenty. There's plenty of people who don't possess magical talents.
do
There are,
they hate on the witches or just mages?
oh, they hate the witches. They think mages are their government, their ruling body. They're the ones that protect them from the scary things in the night, because there are monsters as well. So, and monsters are different from animals. So there are normal, regular animals, and then you have monsters. So there's scary things in the night. So the mages protect them. They run the governments. They keep order. So the witches are just, scary people, scary people who have powers that these evil monsters have. And they kind of gloss over the fact that mages also have those same powers. But,
Mm. So like a bit of a hypocrisy they point out.
The book doesn't focus on the hypocrisy. It's not a philosophical book. It's just a fun tale about her trying to get rid of her nightmares and, trying to do so as best as she can. And she is actually a good person at heart. So she, unlike some of her previous witch companions, doesn't randomly just kill people.
Yeah, fair enough. I wouldn't like someone like that either.
Yeah.